All right, let's get into it because today's guest isn't just covering the game. She's helping shape how the next generation of athletes is understood, evaluated, and ultimately valued. We've got a powerhouse joining us, the CEO and president of the Draft Network, one of the most trusted platforms in the country when it comes to NFL draft coverage, player evaluations, and real football intelligence. But here's why this conversation matters on a completely different level. Every parent of a young athlete, every athlete chasing the next level, you think it's just about talent? It's not. It's about how you're evaluated, how you're perceived, how you prepare, and what people are actually looking for when the opportunity shows up. And that's exactly where she lives. She's been in the rooms. She studied the film, broken down thousands of players, and understand what separates the ones who make it from the ones who thought they would. This isn't highlight reel talk. This is real insight into what coaches and scouts are looking for, what parents should be teaching their kids early that most don't, and what athletes must understand if you want to compete at the highest level. Now, she didn't just land in this position. She earned it through relentless work, credibility, and becoming one of the most respected voices in football analysis today. So whether you're raising an athlete, coaching one, or you are one, you're about to hear something that can change your entire approach to the game. Let's welcome Paige Dimakos to Two Sports Dads. Hey, Paige, how's it going?
First of all, what an intro, man. I'm like, man, I really am that girl, man.
That's
Like,
right.
thank you. This is a perfect way to intro me into draft week. You knocked my last name out of the park. You hit all the high end stuff. And I think most importantly, I'm really excited to get to talk to you guys because we had a pre-show meeting and we got into, obviously people want to talk to me about the draft, but the things you guys got into with me, the fundamentals and the philosophical approach that I think so many parents get lost throughout this process, along the way with good intentions, right? It's just there's no manual on how to handle this process. And so I'm excited to get to talk to you guys, and hopefully, even if it's just one parent that hears us, takes that approach into the draft cycle and it helps them better handle what is a very tough situation for both parents and the kids.
Listen, you've done a lot, right? And I want to peel back a little bit. I want to understand who Paige is. Tell us about how you started the Draft Network, how you built this up, why you got into it, because it's impressive, right? When you look at some of the things that we talk about in our prep show, some of the things that we've seen you do on your platform, it's amazing. And it was great for our listeners to understand a little bit more about you.
Yeah, and I obviously appreciate the kind words. I got brought into the Draft Network as a consultant originally. I wasn't as dedicated to the draft community. Really, the draft community didn't exist the way that it does now back in 2018, end of 2018, the beginning of 2019. So I got brought in because of my background. I had worked at all the major networks. I had a lot of business experience. I had on camera and kind of had really developed, expertise in the digital space across the board when podcasting and video. And so I got brought in as a consultant, and very quickly I fell in love with the draft process. I went to my first Senior Bowl, I went to my first combine, and I saw really, to me, what I identified as the only opportunity left in the NFL where it wasn't being covered at the same high clip, right? You had fantasy football that it was being covered. You had gambling that was being covered. You had everything in the NFL with the exception of really what I identified as the offseason, the free agency and the draft, that hadn't had that same level of coverage that to me the fans wanted. And so immediately I was like, wow, there's a huge business opportunity. And when you think about the 2019 draft, that was in Nashville. And when I described to you guys it was insane there. And going there, I hosted a draft show with Under Armour and Coca-Cola. I sold the sponsorships. I hosted 45 hours of draft coverage. I did 15 interviews. And I still look back and go, how the hell did I literally do all of those
That's
things? Like
crazy.
I did every position, right? Like I literally played every position on the football field. I did them all for the business that year. And it really catapulted the business because nobody was doing it. And so we did a way too early mock draft. And I'll never forget, we dropped it the moment that the draft ended. And if I could show you the comment section on how, 99% of it was, you guys are idiots. Why are you doing this? Nobody cares about this. Nobody cares about a way too early mock draft. Nobody, to now fast forward to now where every major network is doing the exact same thing. It's insane. It's been wild to watch the entire football, really the entire sports media landscape come to this place where now we're covering pro days with national television coverage. I was at Colorado's last year and literally it was on ESPN, right? Watching a pro day. This year, Notre Dame's pro day was on NBC. These are the types of things that have all come to the coverage of this element of the NFL that didn't exist before. And I would say myself and the team and everybody, whether they're past or present, that was involved in the building of the Draft Network, they all have a lot to be proud of because it wasn't just me. It was a lot of people throughout many, many years that built what we have now to the point at which I get, NFL GMs, coaches, agents, players, people walking up to me all the time and, hey, we appreciate all the scouting reports because it helps us. Right. And I'm like, yeah, I'm sure you do. Right. I'm like, because we do all the work. But that part of it is I have a lot of pride in seeing how the rest of the media has come to this place where we're now covering, there's no off season for the NFL. Doesn't exist. And the fans want it. There's craving for insider information and more data and more analysis. It's not going away. It's only getting bigger. And that's before you tap in the international audience. So we're not going anywhere and it's only going to get bigger and bigger as this goes along.
You feel like you're the godmother of draft analysis, right? You're seeing all these other players start coming in. Like I was doing this when it was just me, just our company. And now all the big players who you've worked for in the past are now realizing the value that you've shown them, right?
I think that's a funny way because I think Mel Kiper calls himself the godfather of the draft, and I would agree with that. Kiper is the OG of this community. He still continues to hold the NFL accountable for the continued misses on QBs and misevaluations at that position. I have a lot of respect for Mel. He's really the OG on the television side, and Draft Network's the digital component of it that didn't exist. And Mel wasn't doing way too early mocks a year in advance. We forced him into a position where now he's evaluating a year out. That wasn't happening before because he was kind of in his own lane, living in his own space, and now it's forced him and others to really have to start evaluating college guys immediately. I mean, we're looking at freshmen, sophomore, juniors in college, evaluating them, especially with the transfer portal, to see what type of scheme they're picking up. Are they switching positions? What can we gather when we're talking about the total package of a player by the time they get to the end of their collegiate career? And yeah, I'll take godmother. I definitely feel some level of pride sitting back watching it going, haha, it's pretty funny that everybody called us stupid and now everybody's doing it. So
right. And I think, we want to ask you, what do you do different than some of the bigger players who've come into the market? I mean, I think I know kind of what you do different. And one of those things is you build authentic relationships a lot of time with the athletes, right? And going back to the whole godmother thing. So there's a connection there where there's trust. But tell me in your own words, what is it that Draft Network is so much better or doing different than some of the others that keeps you at the forefront of this industry?
Yeah, I have one rule, and I'm sorry to curse, but it's the only way to say it, and it's don't be an asshole. Yep. It's my only rule, and it's because I played sports. My brother played sports. My dad was a coach. I grew up in a family watching my dad navigate AAU basketball, which is a nightmare to sit there and watch your dad coach and hear all the things that people had to say about him and having just navigating all that and understanding at the end of the day, there's a lot of work that goes into playing the sport at a high level. I know what it's like to win and I know what it's like to lose. And when people criticize athletes and it comes from a place of lack of understanding, I have a really tough time with that. Because if you've never lost something that you've worked your ass off for your whole life, you have no idea what that moment feels like. You have no idea what it's like to go out there and give your all and it's not enough, right? And that is, you literally spend your whole life working towards one thing, and maybe you get injured, or maybe it just doesn't go the way you expected, or you're not big enough or strong enough or whatever. There's a lot of reasons. And to me, that's the component of it that I take a lot of pride in, is the part you kind of alluded to, is the relationships. Because at the end of the day, I can turn on the tape and I don't have to talk to the player to watch the tape, right? And neither does anybody else. But the biggest component in a football player's success is their football character. And that is who they are off the field, who they are and why they play the game. And if the NFL could guarantee themselves an answer to that question authentically, no team would suck. They would never miss on draft picks, right? It's the hardest thing to evaluate because they basically are speed dating these guys, right? They don't have a lot of time with these players. And so the thing that I've really tried to do to not only make myself more valuable in, in the media landscape, but also in with my relationships in the NFL is actually get to know these guys off the field, spend time with them, understand who they are, who their families are, where they come from. And sometimes I think that especially that female male dynamic helps them kind of let their guard down a little bit, right? Where they can be honest and authentic in a way in a conversation on camera where I get a different side of them than the NFL does. And that's helpful when I talk to anybody in the NFL about why I think a player is going to be successful. And I talked to all 32 teams and they asked always the same questions. It's how were they with you? Were they respectful to you? How did they treat you on and off camera? How did they want to know how I am treated as a woman in this industry because that's of value to them. And that's something that I don't think people realize, especially the players, is you're being evaluated on how you treat everybody all the time. And you don't have to fake that if you're a good person and authentic all the time. But if you're a jerk, people are going to know about it. And there's only so much talent that can make up for that attitude. And unfortunately, it seems like that attitude has permeated every industry, especially as of late. So yeah, it's a very interesting dynamic for me to have to get to know, but definitely the differentiator, I believe, for me and for the company has always been just don't be an asshole. Get to know these guys before you get on the internet and have a hot take about somebody you've never even had a conversation with.
Yeah.
That's pretty tough for me to sit there and listen to people when I'm like, you don't even know that guy. How do you have such a strong take? So that's how I feel.
We're gonna dig into that, but Jeremy, can we go pay some bills?
Yeah, no, absolutely. So, we got a few questions for you. You know, we talked a lot. I wish we could. I think you said it early on. I wish we could have recorded our pre-show, and then merged them both together because it was so much fun doing that with you. And then I gotta apologize to Q. I was busting his chops before we got on, and then he came out with that opening. I'm like, man, he won, right? He did. I didn't know he was that smart.
I'm competing against Jason Kelsey, baby.
Receiver's dad. He's just flashy, dynamic, and then he came out with all of that. I'm like, man. All right. Before we get into it, Two Sports Dads presented by Hourglass Wealth Management. Whether your son is heading to the draft or you're just trying to figure out what's next, Hourglass helps athletes and families build lasting financial plans. They are one of 6 broker-dealers approved by the NFLPA and an institutional financial advisor with the NFLPA. So Hourglass, thank you. You'll get more to them, more on them as we move through this and transition, but also in the upcoming days. Of course, Paige, I don't get to give you the second intro, right? You can't top the first one, but Q and I, part of this whole thing, you've heard the story behind the podcast and why we want to do it and adding value, not only to us and education as we learn, because we're in a new territory in life, but we've had a lot of questions with having athletes that play 2 sports in college, right? I have another son who was offered Illinois to play safety, but chose the baseball route only as opposed to 2 sports. So I had to wear the Go Poke stuff for the Oklahoma State and put him back here. He's the only son. No, I think, Q, do you take credit for him too? Is he now your kid? Okay, D1 athlete, he takes my kids. But I think with Jordan and Drake specifically, right? Hopefully we can talk more about the others at some other time. But Jordan and Drake specifically heading into their senior year, I know we talked to you about that. Almost like, can we get you on campus just to meet with them or do a Zoom with them? Because you were giving so much information, not only quality, but it would add value to their life now and to, later. So, when we're looking at these guys, we got 2 guys going into their final college season. What do you see that may be like your average dad? We've been through the grind, we lived it through 60, but we've never been here, right? This is new territory to us. So some advice for us, other juniors, upcoming seniors. What's some advice that you have or something you see that maybe we don't see right now? Because it's a year out to us, right? We have a whole season,
Yeah. So I'll start specifically with you guys as parents, right? For fathers, mothers who are listening to this, aunties, grandmas, grandpas, anybody associated with the family. The best piece of advice for you is do not make yourself part of the story. That is the period. The most like I cannot be more blunt. The number one issue that I see happen with families throughout this process is they get in the way because they're on social media causing issues. They're in the stands causing issues. They are calling the school causing issues. They're dealing with the agents causing issues. And what I mean by that is just being disruptive, right? And that means, listen, I get it. It's impossible. I don't envy any of you guys having to listen and look at the things that are said on the internet, but fighting with people on the internet goes in the NFL file.
Say that.
It does. Like, I need people to understand that. Like, you fight and argue with people on the internet. One, you're not going to win that. People are stupid. Just ignore it. And two, the NFL keeps a file on every single player. And the less stuff that goes in that file, the better you are. So when you've got an auntie that's calling the school, okay, I'm going to use an example from the past and we'll leave the names out of it. When you've got an auntie who's calling the school to ask the school and say they've already given a box to the family for the whole season, okay, for the star player. And the auntie doesn't want to sit in the box with the rest of the family. So she calls the school and says, I want my own box, okay? This creates an environment where the NFL now knows you have a problem member in your family that's causing issues. And the reality is with the NFL, they want the least amount of issues they got to deal with possible. If you can come in with a clean slate where you've done nothing off the field, you caused no problems, and your parents have stayed out of the way, you are a perfect football character prospect. That is the goal. So my advice for the families is stay off the internet. Please don't argue with anybody. Do not make yourself part of the narrative or the storyline because you are being evaluated right now, not when the draft ends. You're being evaluated right now, and you have been evaluated. You will continue to be evaluated at a high level. And the last thing you want as a parent, a family member, or whatever is to be part of the reason why your son got dropped in the draft or fell further in the draft. Because that is, if your entire goal is to set the son up for success, then stay out of the way in these situations. I can't say that more clearly. It is the thing that probably bugs me the most because it really never ceases to amaze me, the things that people will ask for, call, and the worst part is the players have no idea. That's the worst part, is then most of the time they have no idea this is going on. It's very hard for them from a respect factor to be able to tell the parent or family member like, hey, buzz off, right? Like that's a hard from a respect factor. I grew up in a Greek family. I'm not telling an elder to stop doing something. Like that's just not how I was raised. So I think people need to understand the dynamic you're putting this young man in by causing issues and then expecting them to be the one to correct your behavior. Just don't do the things. Don't cause issues. And it's really not that hard. I understand arguing on the internet's fun for some people, but please don't do it. It's just it's not necessary and it's not helping your kid. Your kid's gonna get scrutinized no matter what you do. Just don't add fuel to the fire by arguing with Joe Schmo on the internet who wishes he was 1% as talented as your son.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. You slap yourself?
Yeah, Paige put me in the principal's office. Done that before.
Got to get rid of those burner accounts.
Part of this two sport dads we talked about is learn from mistakes we made as we transition.
For sure.
Now we talk to each other. Hey, bro, what do you think about this? You know, because it's not that it's done from and this speaking from experience. I mean, we both can a little bit. It's not that it's done from or a bad place, right?
No.
You have no idea. It's kind of what you said. You have no idea. You don't know the inside of that, but I can't tell you the inside of that because that could create, and it's like, And it goes into a parental protection mode, and you don't realize you're being a problem more than a protection, right? And
Of
it's like you're
course.
shielding them from the bad in the world, but it's going to happen. So, but that was when you said that in our first pre-call, we talked about that, and so we were laughing about it a little bit because now Q and I, like, he's my venting buddy, I'm his venting buddy, right? And and
It's
and
no,
having that.
let me give you an example. So I created a group chat. I've got 17 parents that I met at the Senior Bowl. And I created a group chat where I told them anything that pisses you off that you see on the internet, drop it in the group chat. Drop it in the group chat. And it's therapeutic because that thing goes off nonstop. And it's something I've done the last 3 years, every year where I'm there because I always get to know the parents at the Senior Bowl. And I tell them, listen, this is just the beginning. It's only going to be hell from here to the draft. So understand this was the last celebratory moment you're going to have. And they all sit there and they kind of look at me wide-eyed because it feels like this thing that should be really exciting, right? Like, wow, you're going through this process to get to the NFL, but it's not. It's horrible. It's horrible. It's constant scrutiny. And if it's your kid and you got to sit there and see all these things, and a lot of it is wrong and not correct and based in nothing. When I told people, listen, you got to understand that 90% of what you're going to see the NFL is, one, doesn't believe, and two, doesn't care about. So just put it into this group chat and just get it out. And that's my advice for the Notre Dame parents. Create your Notre Dame parent group chat and just set it off. All the things you want to put on Twitter, put it in that group chat and just say the things that you want to say to all the idiots that have something to say to your kid. And I get it. I wish I want to yell at everybody all the time and they're not even my kids. I'm like, you have no idea what these guys are going through, but I could argue forever and it's not going to change how those people feel.
So true. Well, then moving on to the draft, like what separates guys that get drafted and guys who don't at the same talent level, right? And then I guess we can couple that with what is some of the biggest mistakes the prospects make as they lead up to it, right? Because those probably go hand in hand, right? Same talent level, same evaluation, and then something leading up does the dropping, right? You touched on one point, but on what the specific athlete might do, what's the separator there?
So there's the big thing that I do every year at the Senior Bowl before the players go into their NFL interviews, right? And that's the beginning of this real process where they could have between 20 to 32 formal or informal sit-down interviews. And I tell every guy the same thing. I say, don't lie. Don't lie. Yep. And every year, a player comes out with tears in his eyes and comes to me and says, I should have listened to you. I'm so sorry. And all I can do is be an advocate and give you the playbook ahead of time. Like, this is how the game's being played, young men. Either play it back or you're going to lose. And they do FBI background checks on every single player. They know everything. They know every parking ticket you've ever had. They know every girlfriend you wronged. They've talked to 7th grade teachers. Like, you will be amazed at the people that reach out to you and say, hey, yeah, I just talked to so-and-so from the Colts. And you're like, wait, what? You're my 7th grade history teacher. Why are they talking to you? But they are trying to evaluate risk reward like a stock, right? That's what they're looking at each player. So they gather as much intel and as much information as they can about each player. And then a player will go into the meeting room with the NFL and they will know something about this player. They will know it for a fact. And they will bring it up to the player, and the player will lie. They will not want to own up to it because because you're nervous, right? There's a lot of reasons why you might lie. You're embarrassed. You don't want to talk about it. You don't want to admit that it happened. It is the number one downfall of a player throughout this process. Not close. And it's because they routinely think that you're going to get away with something and the league's not going to know. And let me just tell you, young men, they know. They know. And I cannot be more clear. If you go in there and lie about it, they knock you. It's a red flag immediately. Because the way that the league looks at this is you are not accountable for your actions, right? You are not acting as a grown-ass man. You're not being accountable for your mistakes and owning up to it. And they knock you for that because they're like, okay, can we count on you? And the flip side of that is you can have made a mistake, you know about that mistake, and you go in with a understanding and appreciation of, yes, I did make that mistake. Yes, I shouldn't have done this. This is why I did it. And be authentic when you answer the question. Be honest about what happened, why you did it, and what you learned from it. And if you do that, you will save yourself a lot of headache, because I've seen players try and avoid whatever the topic is that they're trying to not face. And whether it's the Senior Bowl or the Combine or the 30 visits, it's going to come out. People are going to know, and the NFL is going to ask you about it. And you can either choose to man up and answer the question and be accountable, or you can choose not to do that. And it's the difference between what we call a red and a green flag. And you don't want any red flags. You don't want any red flags. You got red flags, that means character. Red flags, which means less and less opportunity to get drafted. So if I was giving any prospect a piece of advice, it's the number one thing that can help you. It's don't lie. Don't lie. Just be honest about your mistakes, because guess what? Everybody makes mistakes. Everybody does. There are things that you're going to do that you were immature, or you did wrong, or whatever. And what did you learn from it? Just be accountable. And if you're accountable, the NFL will be fine with it. But if you are not accountable and you lie about it, it's a bad move for you, and it's an immediate red flag for the NFL.
And how much does that move the needle? Like a really good, solid interview, how much does that actually move the needle versus, your combine or, what you did in college to get there?
So I was just out in LA with the Rams, filming with their general manager and their head coach. And to me, the Rams have one of the best, if not the best, process with the draft over the last 5 years since those guys have been together. They have immaculate process. They have ultimate trust of each other, and they have an owner that stays out of the way. So it's a very good evaluation and how they do things out there. And I will tell you that that is an organization that, depending on what you lied about, you're off the board. That's the difference. Like, we're talking about, if you are not owning up to it, and the more you backpedal and the more you lie and the more you try and get out of it, the more concerned they are with who you are and whether they can trust you or not. And a lot of teams, to me, some of the best organizations, that's a character immediate, yeah, we're not taking you. If you can't be accountable, you're not going to be accountable on third down. You're not going to be accountable in the locker room. You're not going to you're not going to go want to play special teams. You're going to think you're above things. And I understand that people might say, wow, that's a big jump to go from one lie to this. No, that's it. If you can't sit down in an interview and be honest and upfront about a mistake you made, when you know that's something you did, they can't trust you. And that's hard to win back. It's hard to win back.
That's why I think it's important that we're doing this, so that the younger kids can see, because what happens in these interviews, they're looking for you to be your authentic self. And if you are authentically a jerk, they're going to know about it, right? Yeah. And when you send your kids off to college, part of them growing up to be a man is to understand some of these things, and you're not going to just turn it off because you're going to the draft. You have to be that person, or at least try to alter yourself to be that person as you're going through just normal college process. Right? I mean, look at you. You've been a jerk. You're always a jerk. You can't change it. We all know it.
He's killing me right now. Somebody
it's so funny.
He can't even
pay some bills.
He can't even be in Southern Florida and get the proper waves in his hair so that to wear a headset. He's freaking his will on me. Whatever. But you go back to that though. That starts at a young age, right? Yeah. I mean, those behaviors are early. I mean, I won't use names, but I'll use an example, kind of like you did. My sister, and so she hears this, she knows I'm calling her out. But and I told my mom the truth about everything to a fault, and she did not always, and so. Quite frankly, I didn't use it the right way because I was the 15-month-old brother, right? But like, if something was going down, I could just say she did it because she had gotten known for telling half truths, right? And so she was the one that wasn't telling the truth, and she'll tell to this day, she's 42 now, 43, and she'll be like, you got away with everything. I didn't, right? I had told the truth for so long that I had built trust, and then I just didn't have to say anything and they thought you were lying, right? Like I could tell from your eyes you're lying. But if you start that beyond just sports, but then you take it into youth sports, you go to speak to your coach, travel sports, middle school, high school, like that thing. Then when you get in front of something where that conversation could potentially be worth millions, you're not figuring out how to fake it. Right. This is this is just who I am. This is just what I do. And like, I love that you said, you know, everybody makes mistakes. Even the pure person interviewing you has made a mistake before.
100%.
And they probably are more well known than you. So it's been out there before and they've had to face that. So to me, that's beautiful. And I guess transitioning to the next question is we had a conversation prior, not with you, but you know, you deal with a lot of that college world, but it translates into the NFL world. What's it been like for you, or is there really no effect, like with the whole change in NIL, right? And how is that seen through the draft? Is you know, is it you know, you stay in one place, awesome. You don't, that's okay too. Does it affect like brands? What brands really like to work with that? Like what can they do there? Maybe if you can speak to it on how to brand themselves properly in the college world to be able to gain some of that from that. And then what does that look like moving forward? Does that help you or hurt you in the NFL process? Or is there really, I mean, you get 1, you get 10, that doesn't matter. It's just, you know, how does that work in your world, or how do they collide?
Yeah, I mean, every team is looking at these things differently, but there's still such an old school mentality in the NFL, right? And there is a component of, and it's not even the coaches, it's more the vets, right? You think you're hot shit, you gonna come in and learn real quick, Rook. Like, and that's the part that I think is the toughest part for any guy coming from college is you're the man wherever you are. If you're going to get drafted, you're the top percentage of your college football team. And you were probably the man in high school, and you were probably the man in Pop Warner, and you've been the man your whole life. And then you get to the league and you're not the man anymore, right? And all of a sudden you're learning this, oh snap, I gotta figure out how to be in this locker room and figure this out. And guess what? If you've got a bunch of goofy NIL deals and things that you've done that the players can make fun of, you just putting a target on your back. Like you just walking into the locker room knowing your offensive line's going to clown on you, your D line's going to clown on you, the corners are going to not just know that. So to me, my best piece of advice with NIL is brands that you have to be authentic with who you choose to represent, because at the end of the day, you're associating your name with that brand. So to me, I hope to hear you're not saying yes to everything. That's a green flag. I hope to hear when I ask you the question and when the NFL asks you the question, why did you choose to work with this company, that you actually have an answer for that question, not just, hey, I wanted to get a check.
Right.
That can't be, if that's the answer, it's not a good one. So that's my, like, people are the obviously the adaptation and how quickly things have changed in the NIL space have caused the NFL to kind of, I would say, get to a place where they're probably a little uncomfortable, some of those old school old heads. But I was one of the biggest proponents of NIL when I was in college and then coming out. So I am a proponent of it. I want the players to make money while they're in college. I want them to do things that make sense for them and for their brands. But I want to be clear. You have to keep the main thing, okay? Yeah. And if you lose sight of playing football because you're distracted by stuff off the field, then you've lost. That cannot happen. The reason why brands are trying to work with you is because who you are as a football player. They may then like who you are as a person, but it begins because of your talent and who you are and the association with your brand as a football player. So if you start to not be very good at football, what is the incentivization for that brand to continue to work with you? They won't. They will not. And that is a hard lesson for guys to learn, because it feels like all this support, right, up front, and all these people, and they're showing you love and appreciation, whatever. But the moment things go left, they're out, right? And that is a very, very hard lesson for young men to deal with. And so to me, from the NIL, the best advice I can give for guys is be very particular about the deals that you do. The NFL is going to ask you about it. So you better have answers as to why you did it. And it better not be because of the money. And you better continue to keep football as your North Star, because if it's not your North Star, they will know and it will not end well for you. That's and to me, if your North Star is brand deals, then you're not a guy that's going to make it in the NFL. Period. Right. That's just that's not. You have to love playing this game. You do. You have to. And if you don't love this game and you don't love the process, it's easy to get got. It's easy to get found out. And it shows up on tape. It shows up when there's extra effort needed. It shows up in your interviews. And nobody is telling you, I want to be very clear, I am not saying do not do deals. I am a proponent of deals that make sense for players. But if you say yes to everything, you start to stand for nothing. Yep. Right? If you're an everything person, you don't stand for anything. You're I'm cool doing whatever, supporting whatever. And that cannot be. You got to figure out who you are, what are the things that matter to you as a person on and off the field, and align yourself with brands that fit what you and who you are as a person. Those are the things in the deals where you can find ways to get back to charities that you care about, to create opportunities for people. There are plenty of ways to use NIL as a positive thing. And I think the easiest way to do that is by making sure every brand that you work with, it's not about how much money they're paying you. It's whether or not it is in alignment with who you are as a person and what your brand is to the outside world.
Yeah. And then another question that's going to piggyback off of that is there too much social media? I mean, I know there was one time where Jordan had to make a post and they wanted him to do it on like a Sunday. And he says, well, if we win, I'll post. If we lose, I'm not posting, right? And it goes back to keeping the main thing, right? You need to feel some sort of passion for a win. You need to feel some sort of passion for a loss. So what's your thoughts on that? Because as the generations keep getting younger, social media is just all they knew growing up, right? And so
for sure. That's a great question. And that's a great way to figure out whether or not a brand really cares about doing things the right way or doing it the wrong way. Because the reality is a brand should want the best engagement on that post or that video or whatever that it can have. And if they don't understand that posting after a loss is not the right move to do that, then they're not the right brand to work with, period. That is a very easy differentiating factor here. If you don't even care as a brand to understand that fan bases do not want to see anything from a football player after a loss, let alone a NIL sponsored post, then you just don't get it, period. And to me, that would be the easiest way for me as an athlete to go, yeah, listen, you very clearly don't have my back as a brand. You don't care about how I'm seen, because the perception of me as an athlete matters, and it should matter to you if you're sponsoring me. So if you want me to go out there and take a huge L and just might as well just tell the fans, just target practice. That is the worst thing you can do as a player. After a loss, you look tone deaf. You look like you don't care about the team and you care only about yourself. And whether or not that's true or not, it's what the reality is. It's what perception is of who you are. And it could be your agent posting it or your family. You could not even be the one responsible for it. But that's why it's very crucial to make sure whoever is managing your brand, not your parents' brand, not your agent's brand, not your homie's brand, your brand, that you are very sure whoever has access to that understands the ramifications of doing things like that. And I always say, if you're running your account, I want to see guys run their own accounts. Yeah. If you want to do things, do it for yourself. Learn what it takes to actually build a brand. Learn how to create value for yourself. Don't pawn it off on somebody else, because that just creates one degree of separation where they can make a mistake on your behalf. And you got to be okay with that, knowing that at the end of the day, they're not you. Yeah. And that is something I cannot be more clear on. I'm glad you asked that, because I've seen that go so poorly. And I look and I shake my head because I know it's not even the player. It's an agent or it's an automatic post that they did ahead of time. And they just said, well, yeah, we'll post it on Sunday. No, No, just no. Sundays are bad engagement days. Let's start there. Okay. From a social media, Sundays are bad for engagement. People are watching the NFL. Do not post anything on a Sunday for a brand midweek. Tuesday, Wednesday, great days for sponsored posts. That's when you should be putting that stuff up. And don't give the fans any more opportunity to knock you. That's not what you want. Not what you want.
It's refreshing because there are brands out there like that. I know.
Yes.
You're using Jordan, and we had one with Drake that had asked about some posts just because we were headed to the postseason and having success. And the question back we talked about was, look, I don't want the fan base, my team or my coaches, to think that my mind isn't where it needs to be for that very reason, right? Because we know this, we've experienced this. You're one play away from that being the reason you made that one play, right?
100%.
And it's refreshing to hear you say that. It's also refreshing to hear that there are brands out there who, like, much like Q and I talk about you as the relationship builder, and you actually care about these young men and their futures. And yes, if it's the draft, that's where those connections oftentimes are made on this week, right? But like you've built a relationship prior to that you hope they succeed, far after.
Well, and I'll mention something. Just guys, ask about equity. Players, ask about getting a slice of the pie. If you're really excited about insert brand A and you want to be a part of it, the best thing you can do for yourself is have that conversation. Hey, listen, I want to work with one brand. It's the brand I love. And I tell that's any guy I'm talking to about NIL. I said, what's the one brand that you love more than any other brand? And they all have their own. And then I scale it back and I say, okay, what's a brand you're excited about that not that many people know about, right? And we go to that brand. And then I say, listen, instead of you saying, I want $4,000 or want $2,500 for a post, you know what you can do? You can ask them for 1% equity or a share of equity. And the only thing they can tell you is no. But as far as building wealth and building things for yourself and value as a player, one, being involved in those business conversations is invaluable. Being a part and learning those things, that shows you're a grown-up. That shows you understand things at a higher level. So start to have those conversations. I know it's not something that anybody gives you, a playbook on how to handle, but listen, the only way you're going to learn is by asking and figuring it out. And a lot of these brands are becoming more interested in having those conversations, and it's something you can do that can really build wealth for you and a life after football, no matter when your career ends.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Anything else on that, Q?
No, listen, as you know, Post Peak Partners, right? Another cheap plug for us. That's what we do for athletes, right? We help athletes get equity instead of doing transactionals and going to relationships. But let's take a quick break. When we go and pay some bills.
Two Sports Dad, presented by Hourglass Wealth Management. If you've got a kid playing at the next level, the financial decisions you make right now matter more than most people realize. Hourglass Wealth Management specializes in helping athletes and their families plan smart. Check them out. Now we're moving on to one of my favorite portions of this call, and it's because I was raised with a mom and 4 younger sisters, right? I was the oldest in there. I have 3 boys, a 20.
Jeremy, there's one other NIL thing that I wanted to mention specifically because it has to do with 2 players that played for your team.
Yeah.
And it's some feedback that I got directly from the NFL. So you guys asked me when we were talking about this, right? My advice and how it's impacting how the NFL is looking at it. How the NFL looked at Jadarian Price and Jeremiyah Love this year. The fact that they stayed at Notre Dame. The fact that Jeremiyah, as a superstar, was willing to split carries and not be the featured man the whole time. And that Jadarian chose to stay and be a part of something with Marcus Freeman. That was the highest form of football character that you can have. Awesome. Every single NFL team gave you a green. That is boom, boom. You can't check a higher box because that shows you're about the team before you're about yourself, right? You can put your ego aside to do the right things. They love Marcus Freeman. Everybody in the NFL does. What he stands for, how he operates, the type of discipline the players have when they're coming out. But guys, I wanted to make sure because that's such a great example of how in the current status of college football, no matter what, they still got paid to play. They still had deals, but those guys were looked at such a high level because instead of going and being the man somewhere else, or Jadarian transferring or whatever. They have such a great relationship, the two of them. They have a great bond, and they were willing to not just be all about me and instead be about the team. And that's the highest form of football character you could possibly have.
And it was authentic, right? Like,
Yep.
and we lived that as parents on the other side. And that's not just, I mean, when you look at the other side, that means you got good people in your corner too.
Correct.
Right? Mom, dad, people around you, both families, quality human beings right there. And no doubt, we're excited. I know we were messaging with Jason, you did the other day, I did, and we're excited to see where both of them go. But I want to get into women in sports, right? I have 3 boys, like I was saying, but I have a daughter. She is a 9th grader, and we talk about dreams. And I think we talked about a little bit about her on our call. Like, you know, we have very candid talks at the age of 15 with my kids. And it starts with, my dream is not your dream. My dream is your dad. I tell them what it is. Your dream is your dream, but that means if I'm going to fund your dream, there's a business decision, you know. And with the boys, they have the ability to chase NFL, MLB, things like that. And the girls' sports are coming. They're coming along. We're a little behind, but you know, with my daughter, mature talk. Like, probably if you're fortunate enough to earn that scholarship to play softball at wherever you want to play, that 4th year, the conversation we're having about Jordan and Drake is probably not the same conversation we're having
100%.
about the 4th year there. And so, like, what do you want to do? You know, and we've talked about that. And of late, I brought you up after our last talk a couple weeks ago. I brought you up and what you do, because she's grown up in a sports family her whole life. She's grown up at ball fields since she could sleep in a stroller and then a wagon, right? And then she's one of the hardest working young people I know. And she actually said, I think I want to get a business degree and then go into something in the sports world. And so for that, it's a great learning tool for dad, right? Having you on, but also for the other young ladies and parents that'll listen to this, athletes who will one day have daughters, and of course, maybe who they're dating or will one day marry, which you have comments on that too, when it gets into who you marry.
Keep the main thing.
Yeah, you can roll that into here.
Sure do. Sure do.
But you know, with women now running front offices, starting businesses like yourself, you've started, sold, and then run this. You know, calling games, the officials, right? Building media companies like what we just talked about. How did you get here? What was the timeline for you? Because, you know, from a casual perspective, we maybe didn't know all the work behind the scenes 10 years ago. It's like, oh, she's here, right? It happened fast. Like, bam, she went from there. But that's not the story. So women in sports, like, and what that entails.
Yeah, so I guess I'll start with, much like your daughter, right? I grew up in a family where I spent more time at the ball field or the court or on a football field than I did anywhere else, because my dad was coaching, my brother was playing, I was playing. So that's all I knew. And so to me, when I got to high school, I pushed the football coach to start doing highlight tapes, because that was before Huddle, right? And Huddle was made in Lincoln, Nebraska. Some of my friends, while I was in college, I watched all that technology evolve and become what it is today. But before that existed, you had to do all your own stuff. You had to cut your own tapes. You had to send everything out. And so to me, that was an opportunity to help what was a very archaic football program come out of the dinosaur age and learn how to help these guys get recruited, because they needed to send their tapes out and they needed to have somebody do it. So I started doing this in high school. I started doing it I was a statistician for my dad. Anything that I could do, I did do. And most of the time all of it. I did all of it. I mean, I did all of it. My brother's highlight tape, he got recruited and played D1 ball because I sent out his tapes. Like, he will tell you that.
I'm telling my sisters I wasn't D1 because they weren't coach.
Listen, that's why all his friends are my adopted brothers, because that's why I started to just do this, because I was like, listen, like, nobody else is going to do this for you. Like, I'll do it for you. Like, I enjoyed it. It was something I got to really good at editing and creating the tapes and the videos. And it gave me a love and a passion for the game across sports that I don't think that I would have if I hadn't been a coach's daughter, right? Like, just knowing and seeing that from my dad's eyes with my dad to my brother, right? And the expectations and the pressure my brother had just playing for his dad and all the different dynamics I had to see throughout that part. That's where I really started to figure out ways to provide value to my brother as an athlete, to his friends, to myself, and really just got myself into this, like, okay, I know I want to work in sports. If you read my 8th grade yearbook, it says I want to work in sports media. Like, I've known my whole life. I've always been, I grew up in Chicago, emphatic sports fan, was raised by my dad. So I didn't know anything else. And for me, especially like you're talking about your daughter, there's much more opportunities now for women to make money playing sports. Back when I was graduating in 2013, there were not these opportunities that are existing right now, right? There was no pro volleyball league like there is now. There's a lot more opportunities, but they're still not the same as what the men have. So, to me, there's so much that women can do to work in the industry if you really love it. And that's always my advice to any woman who wants to be involved is you will get found out if you don't actually love the sport, especially football. Football is a really hard, intricate, detailed, process-driven sport. To me, women who love details love football because football is all about details. There's so much that goes into it. And so just learning and understanding and falling in love with the game, if you find that you can provide value to a team, whether that's you want to be in media, or you want to work in scouting, or whatever part of this process you want to be a part of, as long as you authentically love it, you're going to find your way because a lot of these teams are really very interested to hear from a diverse voice. And that's exactly what you bring to the table as a woman. You bring a diverse voice to whatever organization or media entity you're working in. So, my journey started back in high school, continued throughout college. My advice always is just do it. Just try, just do things, try, like whatever you want to do, especially while you're in college, you can make a ton of mistakes. And if you're a college athlete, you got access to everything, man. Take advantage of it. The podcast studios, more players have so much access now to things that are going to help them in their life post sports that you have to take advantage of all those things. And that's the type of stuff that people like myself fought for back when we were in school, when Ndamukong Suh didn't get an NIL deal and was the biggest player in college football, right? So we had to figure out ways to, build our brands without the help of NIL. And now everybody that's in sports is doing it a different way. So for women that want to be in this industry, there's a lot of opportunity for you. You just actually have to love it. And if you love it, you'll find your way. You'll find your way.
Women in sports now. You've been in it for a long time. Actually, I got a question going back to that. So I messed with Q a minute ago about his hair. Like, I think that's like the 5th time I use a joke. Until it's not funny to me, I'm going to keep using it. Right? I laugh every time. But I don't have much to work with up here. Right. But I have several friends that are in the, cosmetology world. Right. And so say if I go in and I start, talking about hair and, the extensions and all this kind of stuff, they're not really going to take me that serious. Like, what's your background? What'd you do? Was it harder for you to get in, you think, because they want to know how much she didn't play it, right? She didn't
especially
do that.
for football.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it's the number one thing, right? Number one thing. And here's what I'll tell every girl that wants to argue with me, because I have this a lot. I mentor a group of young women at ASU's, women, because they have one of the top broadcasting schools in the country. And I get this conversation a lot. This isn't fair. It's not fair. It's not equal. It's not fair. I should be able, and I say, let me tell you something. Life is not fair. Life is not fair. And my dad was very blunt. He's a first-generation Greek father named Plato. Okay, so he didn't do a great job of delivering messages without just being totally blunt. He didn't have the opportunity to be presidential or to be political. No. He does not have that. He talked to me just like how he talked to my brother. Yeah. And so one of the things that he always told me was, listen, if you're going to go cover this game, you got to understand that you are who you are, you look how you look, and there's nothing you can do about it. So you need to make sure that you do everything you can to earn the respect of people in that room by carrying yourself a certain way, right? And that means how you dress, how you act, how you interact with players, how you interact with coaches. We're seeing at the highest level a great example of not doing that the right way in Diana Rossini, right? That's the exact opposite of what you should be doing. So there are things as far as how my dad told me, like, listen, if you're going to be taken seriously, there's a lot of things that you got to know are going to be told to you, and it's not fair and it's not nice, but that's what the reality is. And I think that's the part of things is people want to live in a false reality, right? Where, oh yeah, I'll walk in and they'll think I'm equal. No, they won't. I didn't play the game. I got to know that when I walk in. So what can I do to provide value? Because I do know the game at a high level, but I worked really hard to do that. And I went to the best example is when I was in college, I was at Nebraska with Bo Pelini, who, if you know anything about Bo Pelini is an old school football coach. Okay. He wants none of the nonsense and just wants to coach football. So when I went in to ask for a job, he laughed at me, literally to my face. Okay. And he said, what kind of job do you think you're going to get? Literally just like that. And I was like, Coach, trust me, I can provide value. And he said, yeah, okay. And dismissed me. I went to the office every day for 45 days. I kid you not. I went in every single day. And every day I had a new way that I could tell him or show him that I was going to provide value to the team, right? And I broke him down. To eventually he said, listen, you are very clearly not going to give up. And I said, no, I'm not. He said, and I've never met anybody this determined to work for free, which was true because I was not going to make any money as a GA, as a student. But he said, I have some rules. Sweatpants and sweatshirts, no makeup, and you come in a ball cap. And there's a lot of people that would be offended by those things, but not me, because my dad prepared me for that moment. And I understood what that meant. You will not be a distraction in this locker room. If you are going to come in, you will come here to work, and we will do our best to make sure that we can do that. And because of that, I got to sit in the film room every day at Nebraska for 4 years. I got to learn from some of the best coaches. I got to talk scheme with the coaches. I got to hear the game plans. I got to do things that only coaches get to do because I acted a certain way. I carried myself professionally from the time I was 18 years old on, and they knew I meant business. I was not there for anything other than learning the game and helping provide value. And I understand that, listen, I have this conversation with women all the time. Well, I should be able to wear this outfit. No, you shouldn't. That is not life. Perception is reality. And if I perceive you to be one thing, it does not matter what the reality is. So if you come into the locker room wearing an outfit like you look like you're going to the club, you think you're going to be taken seriously? I need somebody like, I have the same argument with women all the time. That is not life. That is not reality. So I know that I'm a tall, blonde, tan woman. When I walk in, I know that I'm going to garner attention and not in a way that I want to. So how do I combat that and how am I taken seriously? Well, I worked really hard to know the game. I worked really hard to get to know these players and to do something different from what everybody else is doing. And I work really hard at continuing to be respected by carrying myself professionally on and off the field all the time because I don't get a second chance. That's just not how it goes. Diana Rossini is not going to get a second chance. Mike Vrabel will continue to coach and Diana will not have a job. That is reality. Fair or unfair, that is what happened. And that is just how you have to approach this. So if you want to be in the game as a woman, you got to understand you have to combat the conversation of you didn't play the game and you have to carry yourself more professionally than the men. You just do. And I don't want to hear it's not fair. You're going to get my Platoism. Life's not fair. Like I got 1,000 things. Yeah, I got 1,000 things my dad told me that pissed me off when I was a 16-year-old that now I'm like, oh, I hate that I say the things that my dad said when I was, but you guys, dads are right a lot of the time. And you don't like to admit that until you're old enough to go, hey, Pops, yeah, you were probably right about that. Thanks.
Yeah. I mean, some of these things you say, we're talking about women in sports, but it's almost identical to anything in life, right? you got to play by the rules, right? The
Yep.
rules might not be fair to everybody. You got to do more than the next guy's going to do, right? So that's not just to women in sports. That's also to a lot of these athletes. If you want to get ahead, you got to do the things that people aren't willing to do.
Yeah.
Who's that
I mean,
coach?
you.
Was it Arizona State that he was GA for free and went in there.
Yep.
And
Yep.
took the
Kenny
trash
Dillingham.
out? Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, and the thing you brought up with the players, right? How it's applicable to players is, I think we learned this last year with Shedeur Sanders, guys. Nobody is above the process.
Yep.
Nobody is above the NFL. And if you come in and you think you are better than the process and you are above doing what everybody else does, it's going to backfire, whether you're talented or not. And that's not fair, but we're not arguing that. We're giving you what reality is. And I think that's the part that people, especially young guys, get caught up in is, well, it's not fair. It's not fair. Yeah. Good luck. Their life is not fair. And it's not going to change from the NFL to the boardroom to whatever job you are working in. There are things that you're going to have to do that you're going to deem not fair. And that's life. And that's part of it. That's part of it.
Sorry, go ahead, Jeremy.
Yeah, no, for me, this is great. I mean, not only do you add value to, again, what we've talked about with our boys individually, but I think that anybody who puts their set of ears on this is going to have value added to them that cares about this world, but also just adding that part in, because of course we know you from the NFL draft. We know that, but just being able to have that conversation, that where the ears out there for young women, mom and dads that are listening, like for me, it means the world, because you and I'm sure you have mentors before you and women in this industry right now that have paved the way, right? And that you're helping to pave the way. But for young girls who are athletic like you are, who do have the dream of playing in college sports, and now they know they can live beyond it. So thanks for sharing that.
Yeah, there's a statistic that Gatorade did that Gatorade's a big proponent of women staying in sports. And it's that age between 12 and 14 where, you're dealing with changes as a young woman, and a lot of girls quit playing sports. And the statistics behind it are, quite frankly, horrifying. As far as if you stick with sports and you stay through, and if you play just through high school, how much your percentage of success in life goes up. And then if you're, as a woman, you played in college, it's something like 97% of CEOs and executives as women played sports, played team sports, because it teaches you all the fundamentals of how to deal with people, right? That's what team sports does. And I think it's just as important, if not more important, for young women as it is for men. You have to learn how to deal with people, and that's what sports teaches you. So there's a lot you can do with just learning how to deal with people will be valuable. It's the only thing that AI is not going to be able to do, right? So just understand that the best thing you can do for yourself is has excellent people skills. That will make you have the ability to stay unfireable throughout the next decade, is if you can master the craft of dealing with people.
Yep. So let's have a little fun. Let's talk about last season, right? Normally we talk about our proud dad moments, but I want to shift it a little bit. I want to talk about a proud, what do we call you? The godmother, right? From last season. Was there anybody or any situation that happened last season where you're like, man, that kid was on the radar. I met him. He was an awesome kid, and he got drafted. Any stories like that just makes you smile?
Yeah, so I'll bring up a team from last year and last year's draft that had a tough season. So this is a 2024 season going into the 2025 draft. So this past draft, there was two teams that came into the year that had two long-standing coaches. That was the University of Utah and Oklahoma State. Mike Gundy and Kyle, who had been coaching and winning for 20 plus years, okay? If you were putting a bet on a team that was going to win 8 games, the best bet you could have done were one of those two teams. And Oklahoma State had the worst season it had ever had. It was an awful season. They had a lot of injuries. It was honestly, from winning the Big 12 the year before to coming back and just completely falling apart, right? It was a disastrous season. And there were a few guys that I had met from Oklahoma State beforehand Ollie Gordon being one of them, who had come into the year coming off winning the Doak Walker Award as a 19-year-old, right? And so I'm talking to Ollie, and Ollie said, listen, P, you got to meet Nick Martin, our linebacker. And I was like, listen, man, like scouts.com doesn't have, like, no, Nick was not on anybody's radar. And I went to practice that day, and I watched what I deemed to be one of the most just unbelievable linebackers in a practice that I had ever seen, right? And Gundy had insane practices. And I watched Nick Martin, and I was like, oh, that's a ball player. That's an NFL guy. And we came out of that weekend, and I had my scouts write up a report, and they gave him a first-round grade. Wow. And he ended up getting injured that season, but he got drafted by the San Francisco 49ers last year in the 3rd round. And I have a lot of pride in that specific player and that moment with him. And I fast forward to now, where in a month I'm going to be at his wedding with him and his wife, and just being a part of their whole family, but understanding really just I got to watch that whole journey take place. And being a part of it was something I'll never forget. I mean, Nick ate dinner at my house. He was here all the time, knows my whole family. I know his whole family, his parents. I had tough conversations with them, with Nick. But this is a player that nobody was talking about. And then he ends up going to the San Francisco 49ers on day 2, right? That's a hell of an organization and a hell of a pick. And he's so excited about his future. And that's just, I mean, there's been a ton of those type of guys that I've interacted with, but that was such a special moment for me to have watched and been a part of, because I was honestly taken aback by the fact that we went from nobody talking about him to then, even with an injury and all the toughness they had in their season, watching him going in the 3rd round was an amazing moment.
What kind of guy was he off the field?
Perfect football character. Like, I can't speak enough. Like, Nick is a man of faith, wonderful, just what I would describe as a grown-ass man.
Yep.
He didn't need nobody to wake him up. He wasn't late to class. He didn't need anybody to take care of him. He was totally accountable for himself all the time. And that, to me, is one of the things that the NFL doesn't get to see as much of, but that I do, is all those little details. Like, are you always late to meetings in class? Are you always the last one that shows up? Are you the one that people got to come wake your ass up to get you down? And that's that diva treatment. And that's the stuff those are bad habits that need to stop in college, because you will not be a diva in the NFL. You will not.
Yep. And
if you're late to a meeting, you're getting fined, by the way, rooks. You're getting fined, and you're going to start spending hundreds of thousands of dollars for being late to meetings. So learn that now. Like, that's the type that Nick was. Like food prepping. He was taking care of his dogs. He had his own house. Like, he was just grown, and he took care of himself, and he was accountable. And on top of all that, as aggressive as he was as a football player, off the field, he wrote music, he played guitar, he had interests outside of football that brought his brain and brought goodness to who he was as a person. And I think that's so important for every athlete, is finding that balance of things you can do off the field that expand your mind, bring you joy, and keep you centered as you continue to go through this, because you can't just only be doing football. You have to do things that help you bring you back to who you are. And hopefully those are things like, learning music and other things that are going to just make you more diverse and better as a person, right? And don't be afraid to do those things, because it created a wonderful human being who off the field had checked every box.
I'm glad you said that, right? Because we always talk about having a purpose and that being more than a football player. All right, that will help you transition to the after, right? The post-peak. If you have some type of a passion that you get up for every day outside of what your job is, football's a job, is not going to be who you are. And having that purpose and that passion is awesome. And it's awesome to hear from somebody else, right? Not just knucklehead and me. So.
No, and I'll bring up a Hall of Fame football player that I got to cover. Larry Fitzgerald, a guy who Larry is, as far as talented as he was, a better person off the field. Who he was, how he carried himself, the professionalism that he brought to the table each and every day, So much so he never talked smack to a single football player, and it drove every DB and corner absolutely bananas that he wouldn't engage, right? And that person, as talented as he was and as good at football as he was, every offseason he went to another country and he was doing all sorts of things, learning how to cook, like immersing himself in culture outside of football. And I always thought that he was so ahead of his time to be doing that in an era where football, especially 10, 15 years ago when he was first drafted, it was like, you need to do football and nothing else, right? And that was the messaging from everybody, to where you now fast forward to now how things have changed. And I think we've gone from one pendulum swing to the other. We need to come back to center. You need to have things off the field that are a part of who you are, because football can be taken away like this, and it could not be your fault. So you have to know who you are and what your identity is outside of football, while also keeping the main thing the main thing. The reason he was able to do all those things and is because every day that he showed up to practice, he took it and gave 110%. Nobody could question who he was as a football player and the things he did off the field, because he carried himself with utmost professionalism at all times. And when you do that, you give yourself the opportunity to do the things and not get that criticism. So he's a great example of how you can balance that as an athlete, to stay true to who you are off the field and still expand yourself and learn and build that brand, so that when your football career is over, you know who you are outside of football.
Yep. Well, we're glad to have him at Notre Dame now. We've got Devin, his son, and Larry's around, and so hopefully we can pick his brain. But we want to thank you for coming on the show and giving us all this knowledge. I'm sure we're going to share this out with the masses. But how can people reach you, Paige? Because I think that a lot of people are going to reach out to you with this story.
Yeah, you guys can follow me. I'm on every social media platform. I'm the Sports Paige with an I, so Paige. You guys can find me at the Giraffe Network, thegiraffenetwork.com. And if you're a parent or an athlete and you want to reach out, you need some advice, please shoot me an email. My personal email is Paige, Paige, at thegiraffenetwork.com. I don't give that out lightly. I mean business. If you reach out and you're sincere, I will help you. I really trust both these guys and their intentions on this podcast to actually put something out there that I think is more important than ever. Because with NIL and everything that's going on, there's more nonsense and misinformation available than ever before. And so I think for parents, most parents that I interact with really do want to help and have good intentions. They just don't know what to do, or they don't know where to go, or they don't have an advocate, or they don't have time because they're working their ass off and they don't have time, right? And that's a lot of people in this country. So, I hope whoever it is, if you're listening to this and you want to reach out, I will help you. And I think in the future, I'm going to try and come to Notre Dame at some point over the summertime or the early fall to make sure I get to speak to the young men, because I have a lot of love for what Marcus is doing and just what he's building there at Notre Dame, and how I can be helpful, and quite frankly, that they'll listen, because he has the right men in that locker room that will hear the message.
Awesome. Jeremy, you got any closing words?
No, just thank you. I know we stole a little bit of your time, an hour and 15 almost, on a week that's very significant for you. So we look forward to seeing you again. I know from the first time we met you at the Super Bowl, when you were, hosting those folks up at the committee, we looked at each other and, not that you needed to prove anything to us ever, right? But we were like, man, she knows her stuff. Look at the way she conducts the room and everything like that. And then watching some of the stuff on your different channels. And then, of course, just speaking with you. I can't thank you enough for giving us a chance. I know you interviewed us the same way when we were all talking, right? You do that lightly. And you're right. We want to add value. You've already added a ton of value throughout your career and to this podcast. So thank you so much. Looking forward to seeing it again this week. When names are called, and then you had a part in helping make their dreams a reality, right?
Yep. Guys, thank you so much for having me on. My parting words are for all the young men, okay? You better be on starting now. If you understand that you're going to try and get drafted, right now, every person you interact with, every detail of your life is going to be scrutinized. So understand, you better be on, and you better be on right now. And be careful who you interact with. Be careful who you surround yourself with. Be careful who your friends are and be careful the women that you bring into your life. The best piece of advice really I can give you is no girls this year. Just stay away. Okay? Stay focused on football and no girls. That's the best piece of advice. I know it's not reality, but for maybe there's one person that will finally listen to me when I say the downfall every single season that I see happen is distractions. So take that for what it's worth, gentlemen.
Well, we saved that to the end because we wanted everyone to watch the entire show. So if you stayed this long, make sure that you follow at Two Sports Dads on IG, on Twitter, and on YouTube. Like, subscribe, follow, whatever all those things you do. We really appreciate it. And Two Sport Dads, out.